Bitcoin just reclaimed $76,000 heading into the weekly open. RSI is back above 50. ETF sell pressure is easing. So the question everyone is asking right now is this the start of a real recovery? Or just another dead cat bounce before the next leg down? Let's find out. This video is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Nothing here is financial advice. Always do your own research before investing. Let's start with the big picture because the tone this week is genuinely different from last week. 7 days ago, we were sitting here talking about Bitcoin approaching oversold territory, ETF outflows, and a market that looked like it was building toward a deeper drop. This week, the mood has shifted. Not dramatically, not euphorically, but it has shifted. Selling pressure across the board has weakened. Bitcoin is showing recovery momentum. Ethereum is attempting a bounce. And gold continues to hold its ground with positive momentum, signaling that while the macro environment is still uncertain, the extreme risk-off panic from last week has cooled down. The key word for this week is recovery attempt, not confirmed bull trend, not all clear signal. A recovery attempt and how Bitcoin handles the $76,000 to $79,000 range this week will tell us whether this is real or just a temporary relief move. Let's break it down, asset by asset. Bitcoin closed last week in a way that actually gives bulls something to work with. The $76,000 level is functioning as support again. And that's meaningful. This zone was a battleground last week, and the fact that price has stabilized above it rather than breaking down through it tells you buyers stepped in at the right moment. That's not a minor technical detail. It's the difference between a market that's still structurally holding and one that's in freefall. The RSI has recovered to 55. That's back in neutral to positive territory. Last week we were at 27, deep in oversold. The recovery in RSI momentum suggests that the selling exhaustion we were watching for has actually begun to materialize into buying. Still not fully bullish, but the complexion has changed. The trend? Not fully bullish, but the sell pressure has clearly weakened. That's an important distinction. You don't need a raging bull market to make money. You need a market where the risk-reward has shifted. This week, it has. The critical levels to watch. Support is sitting at $76,031. As long as Bitcoin holds above this level, upside attempts are on the table. This is your line in the sand. If it breaks, the recovery narrative breaks with it. On the upside, $79,030 is the main resistance for this week. That's the first real ceiling buyers need to crack. If we get a clean break and hold above $79,000, the next target zone opens up at $82,000, which would represent a significant shift in market structure. The 5-day scenario. Bullish path. BTC holds $76,000. Momentum builds. We test $79,000 by midweek. A close above that and $82,000 comes into play. That would genuinely change the conversation. Bearish path. We lose $76,000. And if that happens, don't underestimate the move lower. $74,000 to $72,000 comes back into play quickly, and all the recovery narrative gets reset to zero. My read, the setup is sideways to positive as long as $76,000 holds, but this isn't a market to chase. Let price confirm before adding exposure. Ethereum is attempting a recovery, but it's still the weaker of the two, and I want to be clear about that. Price is holding above the $2,062 support level, and the RSI has climbed to 52, which is a genuine recovery signal from last week's reading of 35. A short-term relief rally has started. That part is real. But here's the nuance. The underlying trend in ETH is still weak. This looks like a reactive bounce off a key support rather than the beginning of a new uptrend. There's a difference, and it matters for how you position. The resistance levels are stacked. $2,139 is the immediate ceiling. Break that, and you're looking at $2,200, then $2,260 as the next meaningful zones. For ETH to start outperforming and attracting fresh capital, it needs to work through all of those levels and do it with volume. 5-day outlook. If ETH clears $2,139 with conviction, $2,200 to $2,260 is achievable this week. If $2,062 breaks, selling pressure returns fast and the bounce is over. Volatility in ETH is going to stay elevated. That means wider ranges, sharper moves in both directions, and more noise to filter through. Trade it accordingly. The fundamental picture for Ethereum hasn't dramatically improved yet. Bitcoin dominance is still elevated, institutional interest is comparatively lower, and the broader altcoin market hasn't fully regained confidence. Ethereum is bouncing but it's bouncing in a market that still favors Bitcoin. Gold is doing exactly what you'd expect from the world's oldest safe haven asset. It's holding steady and building momentum while everything else tries to find its footing. The $4,516 support level is holding firmly. RSI is at 57, and the momentum structure remains positive. This is what controlled institutional buying looks like on a chart. No panic, no sharp swings, just consistent support and gradual momentum. Resistance sits at $4,601, with the next major target at $4,722 if that level breaks. A weekly close above $4,600 this week would be a genuinely positive signal for gold's near-term trajectory. The macro drivers haven't changed: interest rate uncertainty, geopolitical risk, and a global environment that continues to reward defensive positioning. As long as those conditions persist, and there's no sign they're going away, gold has a fundamental bid underneath it. What does this mean for crypto? It means institutional money is still cautious. When gold is outperforming and holding highs while crypto recovers, it tells you the risk on rotation back into digital assets is gradual, not explosive. Managed expectations are appropriate. Here's what's happening beneath the surface this week. And there are a few things worth paying attention to. ETF outflow pressure is easing. This is genuinely important. Last week, net outflows from Bitcoin spot ETFs were a consistent weight on price. This week, the data is showing a reduction in those outflows, and in some cases, early signs of net neutral or positive flow days. That's not a full reversal yet, but it's a directional change that historically precedes price recovery. Institutional interest in Bitcoin remains strong. On-chain accumulation data continues to show large wallet activity in the $74,000 to $77,000 range, meaning the biggest players have been buying the dip, not selling it. That's the kind of underlying structure that supports a genuine recovery rather than a temporary bounce. Risk appetite across the broader market is starting to recover, slowly. We're not back to greed territory, but the fear reading has come off its lows. When fear recedes and institutional accumulation is happening simultaneously, the conditions for a more sustained recovery start to emerge. The one area that still needs watching: altcoin market confidence hasn't fully returned. Bitcoin can lead a recovery while altcoins continue to underperform. That's the pattern we saw in early 2024, and it's potentially the pattern we're seeing now. Don't assume an ETH or altcoin recovery just because BTC is recovering. Here's the summary for this week. Bitcoin is attempting a real recovery, and the conditions to support it are improving. $76,000 is your support line. Above it, bulls have a case. $79,000 is the target that matters. Above it, the market dynamic shifts meaningfully. Ethereum is bouncing but still lagging. Gold is steady and telling you macro caution persists. ETF pressure is easing but slowly. My approach this week? Let Bitcoin prove itself above $79,000 before getting aggressive. The setup is improving, but improving isn't the same as confirmed. Patience still wins in this market. If this analysis is useful, and especially if you watched last week's video too, subscribe and hit the bell. I do these weekly open and close breakdowns every single week, without hype, just data. Like the video if it helped and drop your BTC target for this week in the comments. I'll see you in the next one. Trade smart.